There is nothing in this world that I enjoy more than having somebody fascinating over to my kitchen and mixing it up. Thank you for being here, first of all, because you're somebody I've known for a very, very long time. You're somebody who, seriously, one of the first library bar people.
I know.
You know what I mean?
I have to tell the story about how I first.
That's what I want to know, because I was actually, seriously, I do not remember exactly when we met. But thank you for coming here, and you are this, you're officially like the second one right now. So I'm loving that. So I'm also just want to tell you real quickly here, and then I want to hear your story, and I'm heating up just some mussels. But basically, this is a saffron-infused sparkling wine with some yuzu. And then I've got like a small little liquid cheese board here, okay? So you've got manchego vermouth, cornichon vermouth, and prosciutto vermouth. And you've got crackers that you can eat with that right here.
I always love to say about you. All obvious things.
So you start telling the story, and I'm gonna take our mussels out of here. Okay.
So
and then these are little baby persimmons.
Oh wow.
You can take it home with you. They're awesome because they actually they taste like little sweet potatoes.
Can I try one right now?
Yeah, please do.
This is a baby persimmon.
Yeah, it's called a lotus persimmon.
The full story was like I was working at UTA, and which is the big talent agency. The big talent agency, and I was throwing these crazy parties, and someone came to me and said, you should try and leverage you have this incredible list. You have like the young Hollywood list. Like brands would pay anything to be in front of that. You should start leveraging your parties against the big brands.
Were there like actresses and actresses coming to those parties?
Oh my God. Like Paris Hilton in her prime.
Oh, wow.
Huge names were coming through, and
wow, okay.
And people just love these parties. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So I started calling up, like cold calling, like, Stoli, you know what I mean? And and I couldn't get anyone to call me back. And then literally I Googled, and I think this website's still there. I Googled tequila.net, and I started and I saw, it was literally a directory of young tequila startups, basically. Because this was really before the craft movement started. The movement started around then. You know what I mean?
It was just starting.
So I called up, and by the way, I don't know if they still have it, but it was the tequila distiller and his cell phone, listed right there. Really? So I just started cold calling these guys, and it was literally it wasn't like you were getting hello and welcome to Don whatever tequila. It was literally a guy who was hello? And I was like, hey, I'm looking for, Juan Pablo. And all of a sudden, he's like, yeah, that's me. And I was like, is this your cell phone on here?
Yeah.
And so I got these tequila companies to sponsor these parties, and they would pay me because they were like, oh my God, you could give us such good exposure.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. And then I started realizing man, there's so many cool bars in LA, with really cool venues that get no traffic.
Yeah.
And there's so many of these cool little brands that I never even knew existed that I happened upon by accident. What if I started combining the two and saying, hey, I'm gonna start a company called Drinks LA, and we're gonna show people cool bars and cool places to drink. Which, by the way, I still think would be a great business for people.
Yeah.
It was great for a long time. People
How long did you do that? How long was that?
I did that for I did that for 3 years, and then evolved that into the tech startup.
Yeah.
For alcohol brands, but but anyway, so I started to really. So what happened is I don't know if you know Rosalind.
Who is she?
She does marketing and whatnot, but I get this.
Brands?
Yeah, and I get this call out of the blue from her, and she says, "Hey, I hear you write about alcohol brands," which I didn't do.
Yeah.
But I was like, yes, I do. And she's like, great. She's like, do you think you could send me a couple articles you've written? Because I represent this this organization called the WSWA, which is the Wholesale Wine and Wholesale Spirits of America. And it's the biggest lobbying group for the alcohol industry in America. And she's like, and all these young brands are there and whatever, and they want to see your work. So I worked all night and put together this gorgeous looking article on Photoshop, and it looked amazing. And I sent it to her, and she was like, they loved it. Do you want to come? And so all of a sudden I was the guy writing the article about WS, and we went for 4 or 5 years to this conference.
Holy smoke.
Every year it was either in Vegas or Orlando. So I started to build my name in the sort of like craft movement, which then became the craft cocktail movement.
Right.
And, you know, bartenders that we know were coming up in the business.
So that was what, 2008?
That was like '08. And so you remember The Wolf, who was a big blogger at the time, Julia Wolfson, amazing human. And so I was doing competitions, and I was judging them, right? I was a judge in a lot of like craft cocktail competitions. I had met you a couple times at these competitions, and you were saying like, come by my bar and whatever.
Okay.
And this is a true story. I tell it behind your back all the time. Like, I had started to get a big head about my role in the craft movement, right? And
you mean kind of like you knew everything, and
I was the man.
Yeah.
People were asking me to be a judge. Like, I wasn't like asking them, you know? And so like, you know, and people were asking me to write articles now, and like, you know, and I really started to get a big head. And so when you came, you told me you got to come by my bar, and I was like, I'll get to you. Right? And so, and I'll never forget this true story. I was supposed to go to an event, and I was all dressed up, and someone called me. They're like, dude, you'll never believe they canceled the event. And I was so pissed off, and I was like, well, I want to go out. Like, wait, hold on, let me shirt this off, sorry. I was like, well, I want to go out. Like, what do I want to do? And then literally, like, the gods, like, intervened, and Julie Wolfson, out of the blue, calls me. Julie Wilson's never called me, right? Like, we've texted and stuff, but, like, she calls me. She's like, what are you doing right now? I was like, oh, I'm so pissed. They canceled this event. I'm all dressed up. She's like, perfect. I'm right by your house. I'll pick you up. We're going to go see Matt Bianconello. And I was like, ugh. Because...
So you recognize my name.
Yeah, we had met a couple of times.
No, but when she said my name, you knew exactly.
I knew exactly. I was like, oh, the library bar. Like, and in fairness, right, to myself, the Roosevelt was like hard. You know, it's all velvet rope douchebags who show the road. Like, there's no way a good bartender would be at the Roosevelt. You know, like, and by the way, to be clear, I also love some of those clubs. Like, I used to go to Teddy's all the time on Monday nights. But like, there's no way a good bartender would be there. So I was like, it's all the way in Hollywood. Like, and so I went with her, and I show up, and it's Christmas time. And you, despite the fact that in my mind, and maybe you didn't pick up on it, I thought I was kind of a dick to you in the, like, a little bit arrogant, like, I'll get to you.
I just don't, okay.
And so, but you were so nice. And I was like, God, this guy's being really nice. Like, I was like, kind of a dick to him, but like, whatever. And you're like, Perry, it's so good to have you. Like, I've got a cocktail you've got to try. And I was like, cool, like, what is it? And you're like, it's an eggnog cocktail. And I was like, dude, I'm Jewish. Like, we don't do eggnog. And he was like, or you were like, I was like, oh no. So I said to him, I was like, well, what's in it? And you said to me, well, so back in June, I took a dry Fino sherry.
Oh, I forgot I did the candy cap and put it in a barrel.
Okay, so
Holy
yes.
smoke.
So you said to me, I took a dry Fino sherry, and I cut you off, and I was like, does this, like, arrogantly said, does this cocktail start in June? And deadpan, you were like, yes. And I was and I was like, you know, like, immediately I was like, wait, what? Like, you know, what was happening in the craft movement, I don't even know if I could say I wasn't impressed with it, because before I met you, I don't know if I wasn't. Maybe I was impressed at the time.
Were you going to places like the Varnish and Comme Ça?
Totally.
So were you impressed with the technique of those things?
Well, you know, as far as the craft movement, what it was at the time, right, it was like, I'm going to stir my Manhattan exactly 17 times because that's the rule. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, but I always felt in my heart, like, I was like, you know, is this a good cocktail? Yes. Are your avocado bitters give some flavor to? Yes. But like, it kind of tastes like a Manhattan, right? Like, it's like, we're not really getting a lot of difference here. We're not getting a lot of innovation. But like, I think I knew that in my heart, but I didn't know it consciously yet.
Right.
And then I met you. So you say to me, it starts in June. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, what do you mean June? Like, it was such a far, and by the way, I can say this as an expert at that time. Like, there weren't a lot of people that were above my knowledge of the game of craft cocktails, right? Like in terms of like what
I didn't realize all this.
Yeah, in terms of what the industry was doing. And when you said that, I was like,
it was kind of like I jabbed you and then hooked you from the
you
just thought the jab was coming and then I hooked you.
I was like, what? What do you mean June? Like that was such a...
I totally forgot that. That's such a great thing to bring up because that was something that I just remember. I don't even remember doing until you said that again.
But here's what's so let me finish telling the cocktail so people can understand what it was. And then I'll go back and tell people like how that cocktail still, no one does that today. Like...
Well, I feel people are going backwards today.
Yeah, I also feel that.
I really, truly feel that.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. But like, so anyway, so you said to me, I took this dry pheno sherry and I infused candy cap mushrooms into them because candy cap mushrooms were in season in June. And I'm like, what the mushrooms in wine? Like, what is happening right now? Like, this was so far.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I honestly feel like, this is my honest to God truth. Like, I honestly feel like I was playing, I'm going to rip on my fellow Jews for a second, but like, I had a student who was at a religious Jewish school here.
Okay.
So he calls me up one day. He's like, Perry, you gotta come to the basketball game today. It's our Jewish school versus this other Jewish school. So now you got a bunch of like 5'8" white guys running around a baskbasketball court. Like this is not. And he's telling me, he's like, we're so good. And I was like, you're not good. You know what I mean?
You're 5'8".
You're 5'8", but like when you started to tell me about this cocktail, and then obviously I'm gonna get to the point of tasting it, but like, I was like, have I been playing in a 5'8" Jewish league my whole life, and I'm just finding out that LeBron James exists? Like, not that like I know he exists and I just haven't been there. Like, no, I'm just finding out that he exists. Yeah. That's what I honestly felt when you were describing. I was like, candy cap, like in June, like what's happening right now?
So now I understand why it was. Now I understand your background, which I don't know why I didn't get to the extent of that.
Yeah.
Why it was it really swept you.
Well, yeah, because so
it wasn't just, oh, this is a great drink and this guy's making a great drink. It's because of everything that led up to that.
Yeah, like I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And you were like I said, like I'm finding out LeBron James is playing basketball. Like, so
that's so awesome.
So then you said to me, I then aged it for 6 months in a white oak American barrel, and I'm like, you're doing what? Like, what is happening? And then you're like, so I took it out a few days ago. I tasted it's amazing.
It really was. I totally remember it.
Yeah.
It was so unbelievable. You didn't even need to mix it.
Right.
You could have just sipped it on its own and it was incredible. Yeah.
So you said that, and then you're like, and then I mixed it with my Italian grandmother's recipe for homemade eggnog. And then I took the next thing really was like, as if all of that didn't blow my mind, you were like, and then I top it with a Saint Germain infused foam. And I was like, now we're infusing foam? Like, what is happening? This is so crazy. And then I shaved white truffles onto the top. And to be honest with you, like, it was so mind-blowing, but I also was like, that sounds horrible. Yeah. Like, mushroom wine with eggnog and Saint Germain.
You're Jewish, you don't do eggnog. You know?
Yeah, I hate eggnog. I was like, and I said to you, I actually said to you, I was like, oh, like, could we do something else? But you said something amazing to me. It actually has like shifted a lot of my life perspective. You were like, one sip. And I was like, what do you mean? You're like, just take one sip. If you don't like it, you give it back to me. Which, as a consumer, I think like everybody should do that, right? Like if you don't like it, just give it back. Like that's incredible customer service.
Yeah.
But like also it makes you, especially when you're doing something like so adventurous, right? So outside of the realm of normal, like that gives confidence to the consumer to be like, okay.
I'm listening to the story and I feel like I got to step up my game. You know what I mean? Like I got to step up my game from that guy.
It was so crazy. So I took a sip and I said, I honestly, like, and you know, people should know, I've had probably 400 of your cocktails at this point.
Yeah.
But like that one to me, I think for a lot of reasons, it may not be the actual best one, but to me in my mind, given all the circumstances, right? Like,
well, I totally understand.
It's the best cocktail I ever had. Yeah. And I tell people that. I tell people that is the best cocktail I've ever had because it was like, it was just another realm. Like I felt like I was like, whoa. And what has so baffled me is the industry like still is rotating the fucking Manhattan 17 times. Like it's like you're just not getting it.
You know, you remember Luke, who worked with me. He's a guy who worked with me. He was awesome. And I went to his house recently, and he works with cannabis and stuff like that. And he has like he works with a guy who works at Employees Only, right?
Okay.
And so he showed him my recent menu. He goes, "That's not bartending, though."
Oh, here we go.
You know what I mean?
Now it becomes.
Now they put it in a different category.
Exactly.
It was just funny because he said that. It was the first time I heard him say, like, he's showing it to somebody, and they're like, "Well, that's not bartending, though."
That's not bartending. Like, my thought is like, listen.
But God, I still remember that. It's like that really struck me. Because what happened was I did so many things that I didn't continue. They kind of had their life, and it's like 100 people got to try it. Well, and it wasn't in retrospect, and I was just like, that's kind of cool. I wasn't trying to be like, you know, all like esoteric and like only 100 people got that one, 200 got this. It was just one of those things where I was on to something else because I kept wanting to explore. I didn't have a foundation yet.
Right. Well, also, like, I think what's so interesting about your journey through all this is like, and I tell people this all the time, I was like, what's so crazy is he is only willing, and I think you live your life this way too, which is also so cool. Like, you're only willing to live in the moment, which is how everyone should live, right? But it's not how most people live. But it's how your cocktails live, because it's like, I tell people, I'm like, you could walk in on a Thursday and be like, I just had the best cocktail of my life. You can come back on Tuesday and he'll literally be like, see you next year, because those things aren't in season again. You know what I mean? And I love that. And I love that, like, you're not willing to like just go get some apple that's been like, you know, reproduced in a in some lab or whatever that gets shipped to Whole Foods every week. Like, it's like whatever's in the farmer's market that week.
No, people can't.
It's your only option.
The guy who is my partner here in the show, Adam, he you know, produced a show that I did for A&E and for Carnival. But when we went to Tahiti, he didn't always go to every episode, but he went to this episode, and he was the showrunner. It was the first time I used pineapples in a drink, and people didn't understand that.
Wow.
They go, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Well, pineapples aren't local in California, so at that time, I didn't feel comfortable like using them, you know." So it wasn't until I went to Tahiti, and first of all, they were the most incredible pineapples.
Oh,
okay,
I mean, it's like you haven't had a pineapple.
It was unbelievable, and I remember grilling them and all that. But and it wasn't until I really started traveling on that show where I was starting to I was like, okay, I'm going to start experimenting and fuse the global with the local. You know, that's where I saw CMOS in St. Lucia and those kinds of things. And that's what really became interesting for me, is I started fusing the outside to the inside.
Right.
You know? So that's so
crazy.
Awesome that you'd say that.
So obviously, you know, my whole thing is like, I have this philosophy, this life philosophy, that I think I maybe hinted it at to you, but like, I believe that we as humans are allotted roughly 15 years. 22 when you graduate college to like 37-ish. If you're a girl and you want to have kids, maybe you got to cut off a few years. If you're a guy, you can maybe stretch it to 40. But like, that window is a very special window in this life, because you can
From 22 to 37?
Yeah, because you could do things you'll never be able to do again.
Yeah.
So the base example of that is like, you're 24, you go to Europe, you could crash at a youth hostel.
Yeah.
Now, at our age, we don't want to be at a youth hostel.
Yeah.
But we also couldn't go to one because it would be creepy.
Yeah.
No one wants a fucking 40-year-old guy running around a youth house with like 19-year-old girls, right? Yeah. So there's all these things you could do in that window, and I really believe that most Americans live this sort of conservative, like, most Americans live for 65, right? I'm going to work, save. I'll take my like 2 vacations a year to the same fucking places, and then I'll retire, right? And like, you miss the whole point of the journey, right? Like, in my opinion. So I preach this a lot to people and whatever, and I was very fortunate to have that philosophy at age 21. When I was studying abroad in Italy, I was like meeting all these kids who were a little older, and I was like, oh, like, they're not thinking about, like, am I going to get an iBanking job on Wall Street?
Yeah.
They're like...
They're in the moment.
They're in the moment.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, what's the next awesome moment? Not like, what's the next job I can get,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I had that mentality, and like I truly believe that if you were to objectively rate yourself on like how you lived from 22 to 37, for me, I was like at a 94, 95. Objectively, like I killed it. Most people, like one of my favorite stories, my best friend Adam will kill me for outing him here, but Adam, was a doctor, got married young, had kids young. So I would call him up, be like, I flew to Bucharest I flew to LA from Bucharest for a date. I literally did that. Like, and then I met my buddies in another city, and then I came back and I was partying somewhere.
Don't
and
worry,
like,
always flames.
It flames? Okay, the flame is normal.
Yeah, flame's normal.
That looks cool. So I was in Bucharest, and then I went here, and and I'll never forget. My buddy Adam turned to me on this phone call, and he was like, Perry, I don't want to hear it anymore. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, your life, it's not my life, and I wish I had it, but like I don't want to be envious. Like I just want to live my life.
Yeah.
And that told me everything I needed to know.
Yeah.
Adam, for me, is a microcosm for the American way of thinking, right? Like, you're missing the point, right?
Do you feel, though, like, because here you are, you're living this life the life that you're describing is not necessarily the life of someone necessarily who goes to college, because what happens is a lot of times is those people do end up following the rules like your friends and go down that path.
Interesting.
So I feel there's something very interesting going on, because you've already, you're coaching all these people to go to school and to college, but how is that going to help them with
live the life
that you have?
That's interesting. So I will tell you the one thing I tell every student, though, because the way I got this philosophy, I tell them you must study abroad. You should do it for 1 full year. And you should do it somewhere where they don't speak English.
So that you're forced to learn the language, you mean?
That's the bonus. There's a much more important skill that happens when you go to a foreign land where they don't speak your language. And by the way, by that I mean, that includes don't go to Milan or don't go to Rome or Paris.
People speak English.
Because everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
So I studied in a little city called Perugia, Italy. They're very famous for their chocolate.
Yeah,
right?
I know that.
Perugina. I always say there's 2 things that happen when you study abroad. The most important is not that you learn the language. If you learn it, great, awesome. But like, what happens when you have to walk into a store and you don't speak English or Italian and they don't speak English, and you got to sit there. Remember the old pocket dictionaries?
Yeah, like the pocket Thomas guy.
Yeah, exactly. And you sit in there and you're like, I want steak, and like the guy's just like, ugh, and you're like, and like it's like this horrible thing, but you learn a skill that, in my opinion, is the most important skill you can learn in your life, which is you learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's a great example, because
Americans are horrible at that.
Yeah.
Right?
So you were, and I bring this up because I loved, you were in that documentary. It was called
Operation Varsity Blues.
Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
And it was really all about all the admissions scandal.
The college admissions scandal.
Explain to people the story of the admissions scandal before you talk about doing it, so they don't know it.
Yeah, so the college admissions industry has really boomed. My mom was actually one of the first people to have this whole boutique sort of college admissions company, right? And one of the other characters who has been doing it for a long time was this guy named Rick Singer. And Rick Singer was in Sacramento, and to be honest, it was a diabolically genius thing. Like,
listen, some of the most diabolical things are genius.
Right, exactly.
People don't like me to say this, but because I hate it, but in 9/11, the scheme that they came up with was genius.
It was a genius scheme,
what
yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
But it's the most evil thing.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I understand it, but
so Rick Singer was a coach in college sports, and he started to realize, wait a second, like when you're the coach, you get to decide who you're recruiting.
Yeah.
So his wheels started turning, and he was like, wait a second, I wonder if I could go to rich people and say, hey, why don't you give me an absorbent fee, $500,000, $1 million, $250,000, whatever it is. I'll go to the coach at a school and offer him 50 grand because.
How long ago did this start? When did this first start?
I think it started. That's actually a good question. I forget. It's all within
years ago.
No, I think it's all within the last 10 years.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
And what's interesting about his business was he also had the ethical business. And I just met Ori, my brother met a guy. Ori met a guy the other day who was in Louisiana, and Rick Singer came to his house, and he said,
what?
And what Rick Singer does was he would come to your house and he would start to inch at you and be like, so how badly do you want him to go to fill in the blank? How badly do you want him to go to USC?
Yeah.
And if they're like, he has to go to USC, he's like, well.
He knew he had him.
He knew he had him.
Yeah.
And this guy was not that, so this guy kicked him out.
Yeah.
It's like, but Rick would then offer, he'd be like, all right, well, look, he would offer what we do, the ethical version of college admissions.
Which is a lot less money.
Which is a lot less money, right? But anyway, so Rick started to pay off basically coaches to name these kids as recruits, right? So you would get Lori Laughlin's kids, obviously being the most famous, would be on the crew team as recruits.
And they weren't on the crew team.
They never rode a damn day of crew in their lives.
But how did that go on for so long? How is that possible? Because I could understand why someone was doing what they were doing.
Right.
What I didn't understand is how could that go on for so long? And
here's what's even crazier. Did you ever read about how he got caught? No. He got caught by accident. So one of the guys who paid him off, right, to get his kid into school, committed financial fraud. And the FBI nailed him for financial fraud.
Oh, that's right.
And in a desperate moment, the guy was like, listen, don't yell at me. Look at what this guy did. And he outed him, and that's when they started wiretapping that guy and realizing, oh my God, this guy's running this crazy operation, illegal operation, and that's how he got caught. Otherwise, by the way, it would be almost impossible to get caught because, let's say you're on the sailing team, right? You get 3 recruits a year. So 2 of them work out great, and 1 just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Right? And that person never even showed up to practice. Right? But the thing was, and I, by the way, as a former college soccer player, you never got told, you didn't know, oh, we had 5 recruits this year.
Yeah.
You just, you showed up at preseason.
Schools are so large, and then there's,
It'd be impossible to know.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm telling you, he would have never been caught had this other guy not committed financial fraud. Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
So anyway, so we got approached by the director of that film, Chris Smith, and he said, listen, I've talked to some people who've worked with you. They said, we've got to talk to you about, this world. And so we sat down, and he was like, listen, we're going to interview for a couple hours, and you're going to be in for a couple seconds. And I was like, okay, cool, fine. But man, they loved us.
You were in it a lot.
A lot of people think we made the documentary. It was crazy.
Were in it a lot.
So between me and my mom Barbara, who she was also interviewed in it, people are like, man, that's your guys' documentary.
But beyond what was really in the documentary, I'm more fascinated in the real stories that you have with kids. You experience, obviously you're not a Rick, but you've experienced kind of these parents and these types of parents and the desperation of these kids. So how is that? And you still deal with that?
Right? Oh yeah.
That hasn't changed anything just because that documentary came out.
Totally. I literally, what's today? Wednesday? Monday? I got a call from this Russian billionaire, and he said to me, he's like, well, what should I do? Should I write this check and let's write $100 million and we're done? And I was like, listen, if you want to, you can. I think you're setting the wrong example for your kids, but and I'm honest with them. I was like, I'll tell them, but if you want that, I can arrange it for you. That is a legal way to do it. You can write a check to a school.
Would that guarantee their kids to get
It's interesting. It doesn't actually guarantee it, but
how could someone say, not look at $100 million?
I mean, or 50 or 10 even, for most schools, 10 million is a game changer for them. So, yeah, we still get these calls from Chinese billionaires, Russian billionaires. Like, they're like, you know, can you arrange for us to buy our way in? You know, and there's a perfectly legal way to do that. You know, they call it the back door. Rick Singer was doing, they called it the side door, right?
Yeah, because he was asking for money.
Exactly. But I will tell you, you know, there's an interesting, everyone wants to go up in arms, like, it's bullshit, they're paying $20 million to get in. I used to, the president of my college is one of the foremost experts on the economics of higher education. And he said to me an interesting line. He said, look, Perry, I went to Williams College, right? So 500 kids in a class. He goes, the better way to, instead of getting all up in arms about it, the better way to think about it is, there's 500 kids in a class, but there's really only 490 spots. And there's going to be 10 spots that go to kids who don't deserve it, but they're giving exorbitant fees. And the reason that you get to study in that incredible new science center is because that kid wrote that check. And when you think of it that way, you almost want kids to buy their way into some schools. Because, by the way, I think most people make the mistake. You know, Harvard might have, 1,500 kids in a class. Like, if 20 kids buy their way in, like, who cares? Like, it's a statistical insignificant.
Isn't there a point where these colleges have more money than they know what to do with?
And that's the other. So that's the flip side, right? Like,
so what is that about? I mean, like, they don't need the $10 million. So what is that?
It's a weird thing in the college admissions industry where these schools, it's funny, I was talking to a guy last month and he was like, I'm on the board of SMU, Southern Methodist University. Yeah. You know,
that's where my ex-girlfriend went.
No way.
Yeah, she lives right near there.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, right in Dallas. So he's like, I'm on the board of SMU. I'll never forget the meeting. We all were sitting there. It was like a bunch of people around this boardroom table, and a guy goes, "Why is this such? We're having some issue about budget." Whenever he goes, "Can't we just take it out of the endowment? Like what?"
Yeah.
And literally, people looked at him like he said a racist comment, or like, you know, like he was proposing like another Holocaust or something. Like, it was, these schools have this weird.
It's almost like they feel like they don't want to use their own money.
I guess, and it's so strange. And I think it's coming to roost. Like, they're gonna get nailed for it, because like, you can't have $60 billion in the bank and get these tax credits. Like, it doesn't, you know, like, at some point you got to come out of your own pocket for that, because there's other kids who could use that money.
Oh my God, yeah.
So
what is happening with those endowments? Are they just sitting there?
Sitting there getting bigger every year. I mean, you're talking 20, 30, 40 billion dollars from some of these big guns. Like, stupid. USC's got like 25 billion or something. Like, it's an insane amount of money. And then you're like, why are tuitions? It's $75,000 a year. Like, college is gonna get its due. I think college will always have a place, but I think you're gonna see an evolution.
Well,
which is
you hear. I mean, you're a fan of Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you hear how he talks a lot about, like, you don't really need to go to college, everything you really need to learn.
Here's the problem, though, with an Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a genius of a rarefied level, right?
Yeah.
I think that most people... Let me back up. China is a very interesting place, okay? When I think about the Chinese education system and I juxtapose it with the American education system, you know, most Americans, like myself, who come from a privileged background, I went to a great boarding school and a great college, I look at the Chinese education system and I'm like, that's the most ass-backwards thing I've ever seen.
Why is that?
Because it's a rote memorization scenario. Your whole life gets decided by 2 exams. There's a middle school exam to get into high school,
that's right.
and a high school exam to get into college. And if you bomb one of those, you're pretty much doomed to a life of mediocrity. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like, so parents freak out, by the way, when you bomb the middle school exam. That's why a lot of Chinese parents are like, all right, we're putting you on the international school route, and you're going to go abroad. So the crazy thing is, when a Chinese kid goes to Harvard, that's like their second tier geniuses. Okay, because the first tier did well on their middle school exam and their high school exam, and are going to college, right? So anyway, it's very easy to look at the Chinese system and be like, well, that's ridiculous. These kids aren't allowed to dream. They're not allowed to explore, you know, and study some math and study some history and figure out what they want to do in the world. But like that luxury, the thing that Elon Musk is talking about, whatever, like that's affordable to very few people. What do we got here?
So this is one of my I just created this drink last week. I love it. I think it's up your alley. It's half Wakata, which is the black Peruvian mint, aquavit, yuzu, and parsley. And
parsley.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about your cocktails, I mean, I was talking about that you hit on all the senses, but my favorite is the smell, because the stuff you find is so fucking fresh, and you smell it in the cocktail. You're like, am I at the farmer's market? Wow. Oh, so good.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just a really unique, different kind of refreshing drink, and it has that crack element to it.
Every human deserves to drink this at least once in their life in the middle of summer.
Last Saturday for the first time.
Wow. So to finish, the Chinese education system is really interesting because on the one hand, no one's allowed to really explore and discover their passion and whatever. On the other hand, they get kids through the system, educated, and they get a job.
Right.
And
we don't have that, though.
So for the bottom 90%, for the top 10% in America, it's the best education in the world. You get to explore, you get to have all this fun. For the bottom 90%, like that's not a reality for them. So,
and they're not necessarily obviously getting a job because they went to school.
Exactly. So like, I'm looking at China going, well, maybe they're doing it right. Like, yeah, like that guy's going to be in a job that's miserable, but if he doesn't know he doesn't know what he doesn't know. So maybe he's just like, okay, well, this is what I do from 9 a.m. to, well, they go 9 to 9.
Yeah.
This is what I do from 9 to 9.
Yeah.
And then I go home and sleep. And like, I never knew that there was another world out there. So maybe that they're happier. I don't know. But what I do know is that more Chinese citizens fit in as cogs in the wheel, right? That makes the economy run than Americans do.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you start talking about Elon Musk, I love Elon Musk, and I love that concept in theory. In practice, I don't think it's reality because, first of all, most people are not as smart. Yeah, it's a privileged thing. Like if Elon Musk didn't
he's creating a school for his kids. You know what I mean? Like
come on, like this guy is like in another sphere. So it's like for him to dictate what the common person needs, like. The common person needs...
He's talking from his own experience.
Exactly. The common person, though, needs to get a degree of some sort. By the way, we're the first people, even though our shirt says college in the Animal House font, and then it says, we get you in. And then after the scandal, we added ethically, right?
That's so awesome.
But we always point out that's a marketing thing. Like, in reality, we're a pathways organization. And we believe that, you know what, maybe vocational school is better. Maybe going to a coding boot camp, you could pay $30,000 for coding boot camp and walk out making $75,000. You know, like
what is that? What is a coding boot?
It's literally where you just learn how to code, like for computers, like software coding.
And that's a 4-year program?
No, it's like a year, sometimes 6 months.
Wow.
You can go hard 6 months, walk out making $75,000.
Wow.
Like it's amazing. And by the way, not only do you get the coding, they like work on job placement and like all this stuff. It's unbelievable. And so anyway, I don't know. I look at the American system and I'm like, we're failing our kids left and right.
Yeah.
For every 100 kids in an underserved area, right? So right here in Compton, right? 10 minutes away, 20 kids will make it to college and only 3 will graduate, right? We look at that and we're like, that's unacceptable. From a humanitarian perspective, obviously.
Yeah.
But we also think it's untenable from a societal one.
Yeah.
We won't survive this mass undereducation of our youth. Like, when you wonder how, forget Democrat and Republican. Trump is his own entity.
Yeah.
And I think most rational-minded people, including Republicans, look at him and they're like, what is happening? This is insane, right?
Yeah.
The reason why it can happen is because you undereducate your masses. right? Here you have a guy who's 0 for, I think, 57 or 67 court cases. Oh! And people still think the election was rigged. Like,
yeah.
I mean, this is...
That blows my mind.
But that's an education problem.
No, absolutely.
Right?
I agree with you.
And so, I don't know. I look at it and I'm like, wait a second. I think, like, if we can get more kids across the finish line, I think one of our big problems as a country is, like, we have this K-12 system. It's designed to get you to grade 13, which is either college or vocational. If you were to look objectively at the education system, what is its ultimate purpose? If you were to give one through line of why the education system should even exist.
The system? Oh, you mean why it should, not what it does.
Yeah, just why should it exist? What should the final purpose be?
Well, I mean, I would hope that you're learning. You're actually learning.
That's the privileged education standpoint. Of course.
But I don't know. I think what you're saying. I think you might be asking, does it get you to a job?
It needs to.
Yeah.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily do that.
Oh,
right.
Forget doesn't necessarily. It doesn't. Right. Like
unless you're going for a specific thing. You're being a lawyer, being a doctor.
But even just like in general, right? Our K-12 system does not get you to the point where you can then get on a pathway.
Right.
But that needs to be the point. Like.
So how does that change, though?
Well, to me, from our perspective as a company, it's like you've got to get kids. There's an interesting statistic. So I told you, for every underserved kid in an underserved area, out of 100 kids, 20 will make it to college, 3 will graduate. But 94% of those kids, 94% of all kids, will tell you in 8th grade that they have the dream of going to college. Mm. So what an incredible drop-off.
Yeah.
Right? So for us, our thing is like, well, then we got to get to them then.
Yeah.
When they still have the dream. And instead of giving them 0 to 2 touch points with their college counselor or their future across the entire 4-year high school journey, what if we gave them 100 to 150 touch points? Going to college or going to a future, your future should be a class you take in high school.
Right.
What's the point of math and history and art? It all doesn't matter if you don't engage with your future.
But you recently became a father, right?
It's crazy.
I'm going to give you some cool things that you could do, because I wish someone told me when you were young.
Yeah, and I need that stuff.
I'm going to tell you something that's beyond just parenting.
Right.
Because I started too late. Start an email account for your kid and start emailing him now. Anything. And one day when he has it, he's going to have 15,000 emails from you. I love when we did this. I love when we did that.
Wow.
I'm telling you, I started
That's
my
such a
boys.
cool
I've
idea.
been doing it for only 6 months. I wish I did it now, because you could be like, I love when all you can say is you like Caden @gmail.com.
Right.
Even if it's an email that he doesn't use later on, you'll be like, one day you'll be like, here's
a password.
Here's this, and you and Vanessa, he'll be like, and he'll have this amazing oral history. You know.
Well, by the way, I talk about this all the time. Is like when I tell kids, hey, you got to go study abroad.
Yeah.
Or if I tell a slightly older kid, here's the story of the 15-year window and why you need to maximize it. By the way, I didn't finish that, which is that the reality of being 40, the things I enjoy at 40 look the same at 65. I see 65, because I like going to nice restaurants, I see 65-year-olds there.
Yeah.
I was at Central in Peru. There's a bunch of 65-year-olds. Like, it doesn't change that much, but the shit you can do from 22 to 37.
You know who Eric Bogosian is?
No.
He's he's an actor, but he did this one-man show, and it was a funny one-man show where I can't remember what it was called. He had all these different characters, but he had this one character. He's like, he's smoking a cigar. He's like, yeah, they say cigars take 3 years out of your life. Who cares? From 82 to 85, I don't need those 3 years. You know what I mean? So it's so funny. He was really being specific about those 3 years.
Right.
Who cares?
Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's a very core part of my philosophy. But anyway, I was saying, at 23, you have 0 perspective on time. Right?
Yeah.
You can't. So what I am telling you about this 15-year window is something you cannot understand.
And then
Well, yeah, but by saying like, hey, it's going to go like this, and you're going to turn around, you'll be 40, looking back going, did I do it right or not?
Yeah.
They can't understand that.
No.
And so
how do you get that through to them?
How do you get it through? The answer is I don't know. Like I guess
only by example. They have to see someone who's really done that.
But I will tell you this. I've had, in LA, 1,500 students. In New Jersey, I've had probably another 4,000 or 5,000.
Wow.
Okay?
Amazing.
But in LA, since I've been having this philosophy a little later, like I had this philosophy later, right? So my Jersey kids, I was younger. I have told 1,500 kids this philosophy. I tell it to every kid before I say goodbye for the last time because I'm never going to see them again. Say, here's your life tip, right? I've had like 3 kids take me up on it. And by the way, those 3 every day will send me a thank you.
Yeah.
Be like, dude, I'm in Peru right now. I'm in Mexico City. I'm in whatever. It's all because of you, right? And so, but that's the life challenge, right? How do you tell someone something about which they cannot understand?
It's you're going to go through that just as a father in general.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a kid, right? Like everything is something they cannot understand.
Everything, Kai, is no. I don't even listen anymore. We're going, and then I have to pull him away from what he said no to.
Right, exactly.
But if I really listened to me saying no, we wouldn't do anything.
Exactly.
You know?
So it's an interesting thing, right? Like, and I've been battling with this intellectually. It's like, how do you, like, I'm giving these kids, when I give them this advice, this is gold.
But talk to me, because you told me, you got me into, and I agree with you, and I don't know how you would do that.
Right.
But you talked to me one time and you said, yeah, I'm tutoring these kids, and it's like, he bought this crypto, and
yeah,
I told him to sell it, and he was pissed at me because it went up higher. But you got all these kids that during the pandemic took their money from whatever it was.
They got the EDD, the like, unemployment money.
And they were making millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I've got kids who are loaded right now.
Because they literally what?
They you know, the interesting thing about kids, you know, it's funny because I want these kids to listen to me, but I've also learned it's really important to listen to them because they're seeing things.
They're just more tuned into what's
way more tuned in
rapidly. No, but seriously, brother, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to be here, bro.
I love it. I love how you tell these stories, and I love your background.
You're the genius, man. You're the genius.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Do you want to plug your business at all, or is there a website? Is there anything?
Yeah, it's called AKALA, AKALA. Our
AKALA.
Yeah, okay. Our website's goakala.com.
Okay.
I usually just leave people with the idea that, you know, you will often hear in this country that we have a 500-to-1 student to counselor ratio on average, which sounds crazy and it's a lot.
It's a lot.
But here's the crazy thing. That's the good news. The bad news is that number hides a very dark truth, which is that one counselor is not a dedicated college counselor. They are, as anyone who's been in public school knows, a guidance counselor.
Yeah.
And guidance counselors are tasked with 100 other things to do. So not only are they not even qualified to give the guidance because they don't have the expertise, they also don't have the time.
Yeah.
So the scary number for us is there are 17,000 schools in America. That's 2/3 of our entire public school system. 2 out of every 3 high schools do not have a dedicated college counselor. Wow. And so what we're on the mission to do is to level that playing field. When you think about the one thing, you know, the scandal is the best example of it, but like we always said about the scandal was statistically insignificant. Yeah, it got all the press because Laughlin and Felicity Huffman and whatever, but at the end of the day, 50, 100 kids, it doesn't matter. That's 50, 100 kids over 10 years, 12 different schools. Like, you're talking about a spot here, a spot there. Yeah. The real crisis is that most wealthy people access people like me ethically. And I give their kid a massive advantage over their peers. Yeah. And so our mission with AKALA is to level that playing field, to give everybody the level of guidance that most wealthy people would pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to access.
And can anybody in the country?
Anybody in the country can have
work with you.
Yeah.
So they work during Zoom or?
Yeah, we were remote long before it was cool to be remote.
Yeah.
We get involved as early as 8th grade.
Okay.
and then we help guide that decision making. We put them on our platform. We have an awesome platform that's designed to give them the guidance in every category that colleges are going to consider when evaluating a candidate. And we guide everything from 8th through 12th grade and get them across the finish line. So
Excellent. Okay.
that's what we're doing.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
I can't wait to see where your kid goes.
Oh, it's gonna be a rough journey, but we're going on it.
Yeah. All right, well, cheers.
All right, man. Cheers. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Of course, thank you for being.